My name's Alex Everett. I work for the College of EHE next door in Ramsayre for the Educational Technology Department. And I'm here to talk to you about digital storytelling. And I first became involved with digital storytelling when I was working for the Digital Union about 2008. And it was one of my favorite things to do at work was to assist with these workshops where people create what we call digital stories, which is like a personal narrative where they're telling some story from their life through images and voiceover. And it's just a really interesting and kind of thought-provoking medium because people can kind of tell a personal story from their life, you know, their family history, some social activism, something that you really care about. And you can kind of make that come across with music and your voice. And so I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different kind of techniques and ways that you can use this in teaching or personally as a project, this or that. I'm going to be showing a whole bunch of resources where you can download things, and if you don't want to write down the URLs for everything, you can download my PowerPoint with all of my files, video files, audio files, images from this URL, go.osu.edu/innovatedsfiles. And yeah, give me a second to write that down. So yeah, we're going to talk about digital stories, why it's a good idea to create them. The 7 elements of digital storytelling will give you some direction on how to create these conceptually. We're going to do a visual selection activity here, which you'll get to choose images that go with a story, and then I have an iMovie project where we'll get to put it all together and you'll actually get to watch the story that we create together. I'm going to show you a video about how to do this with the software, and then I'm going to go over my spiel with copyright-free Creative Commons media, give you a bunch of good resources that you can use, show you how to use some of those, best practices for video, audio recording, stuff like that, as well as the equipment loan resources that you have available to you here in the college through EdTech over in the College Commons, and some more resource stuff, time for question answer. I'm going to show you a couple of examples to kick things off here, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about and get really inspired by these. So how many people in here have made a video before? You ever shoot video? Like a lot of people now. It's becoming pretty common. You know, we take videos on our phones, and you know, it's not like just a high-skilled elitist medium that's reserved for like filmmakers and things anymore. It's like everybody has to create video now, and so I'll be going more into that after these. So I'll show you, this is Brian Edmiston's digital story that he created, Imaginative Inquiry.
Ella had been bitten on the arm and leg, but no one had noticed. There was a hush from the other children when 6-year-old Ella stood beside me. For over a year, she'd always been at the edge of classroom activities, but now all eyes were on her as someone whispered, "A wolf got her." He meant one of the wolves that had blown down the homes of the 3 little pigs, a story they had recently read with their teacher. Within minutes, a dozen children needed medical attention, as others searched the woods for wolves. Every child was urgently and imaginatively grappling with the inquiry question, what should we do with the wolves? In this first grade classroom, where I was a visiting teacher, everyone had begun to engage in imaginative inquiry that was taking them inside the imagined world of the 3 Little Pigs folktale. What if we were pigs trying to protect ourselves? What if we were wolves looking for food? Imaginative inquiry was transforming both the learning in this classroom and my teaching relationship with the children. I talked with children as if I too had to deal with dangerous wolves. "How might we catch the wolves without hurting them?" I asked. And in response, those whose guns were trained on the forest transformed their weapons into tranquilizers and cameras. The next day, Beanie Baby wolves arrived in the classroom, and soon there were teams of veterinarians caring for hurt wolves, adults and babies. Where might we take the wolves so they could live undisturbed? I wondered. My colleague Marie pretended to be a ranger in Yellowstone as we all telephoned her to find out about a wolf's life in a national park. Over the next few weeks, we imagined that we had the challenging responsibility of running a company, Animal Life Care. In planning how to move those wolves to Yellowstone National Park, scores of complex inquiry questions guided the children's literacy, scientific and mathematical learning, as well as my teaching. How will we care for the wolves as we move them halfway across the country? What if a wolf dies? What if a wolf needs a shot? How will we lift wolves and load up the truck? How will we raise money to pay for the trip? Who will pass the driving tests to drive the trucks? Where will we stay on the way? How shall we celebrate the release of the wolves? Just like adults, all children are naturally curious and will engage in deep learning in communities of inquiry. Children are filled with questions about the world around them and the worlds that they imagine from stories. But too often in classrooms, children's questions are either passed over or are not harnessed and extended by teachers. Nothing engages children like play, yet play in classrooms is easily mistaken for frivolity. Couple pretend play with inquiry and add an adult who joins in the group exploration, and you have imaginative inquiry. To use imaginative inquiry in the classroom, we have to be children's colleagues on a collaborative, playful journey of exploration. We have to be able to listen and struggle with children, not dominate them. We must follow children's lead, but also suggest other possibilities and shape and challenge their ideas about complex questions. Together, we can imagine other possible lives, possible communities, and possible futures.
I mean, I like that story. He kind of did a good job of like guiding your viewer experience while you're watching it. You know, he sets up like a hook, like a conflict in the beginning. You know, why are these children injured by wolves? And then, you know, it unfolds into his whole teaching process, which I think can be a really good kind of plot structure for something like this. And, you know, that's just simple photos with this like automatic animation, the panning and zooming effects that you can do automatically with iMovie. And he's got some simple music in there which kind of sets a mood but doesn't overpower the piece. And I've got one more story to show you. This one was created by Karen Diaz, who is now the leader of the digital storytelling program, but she created this way back in like 2007, I want to say. It's about her experiences with reading.
When I was a baby, I learned language through stories. As I grew, stories taught me to read, developed my sense of humor, shaped my understanding of God, gave me a moral compass, and helped me begin to grapple with human nature. At 12, I had to look up the word rape in the dictionary because of a story. In college, I got a degree from studying stories. language, themes, metaphors, characters, humor, tragedy, choices, patterns, stories on film, all added up to give me a broad perspective and critical thinking skills. Imagine that. Somehow, though, I never got what I know about stories now. What I know now is that we all have stories to tell. They're significant. They can be shared. I can be part of my culture's storytelling dynamic. I'm a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mom, a friend, a professional, a citizen. All these parts of me can be stories and can help me build community with others in each of those realms. Even academic interests can be shared in story and can help me build connections with students that facts alone can't. The Center for Digital Storytelling taught me how to tell you my story about stories. I learned to struggle with my script, to keep it short but sharp. I shared it with a group of colleagues who helped me figure out what the point of my story was and the most engaging way to make that point. I had pictures in my mind of what illustrated my thoughts, then found old pictures and made new ones to represent these thoughts. I digitized them and used software to turn them into something that flows and moves. I searched for music to help you feel a connection to what I'm telling you and the mood that I'm trying to convey. I experimented and edited to make my story what you're hearing today. Some parts of this process were challenging for me. I thought that if you knew that stories could be about anything, that even grown-ups can have pictures in their stories, that they can be funny or sad, that it's okay to bring emotion and reveal some of your humanity, even if it's your work you're talking about, then you would want to tell me a story about yourself, something you know, what you care about, why you do what you do. Then maybe I can know you a little better and learn or understand or care about something new myself.
It's a cool story. She goes over a lot of points that I will be talking about. Reaching your students through this medium and creating something that you care about. You kind of get the idea of what these are like, and specifically, they're usually a 3 to 5 minute personal narrative, usually told from a first person perspective, but you can take on a third person or an inanimate object as your voice on these. I've seen an anthropology professor that I worked with who took on the persona of his subject matter of the Neanderthal, and it was a really humorous piece. Sometimes people take on like a bead or a piece of jewelry if they're like telling kind of a cultural story. And the most basic type of digital story is just basically a slideshow of images with your voiceover over top of it. And if you want to get more complicated, you can do transitions to smooth things out, add music. And like I said, I've been doing this since about 2008. The program started here in 2006 based on the Center for Digital Storytelling that Karen had mentioned, which is out in Berkeley, led by Joe Lambert. And so now he travels the world and goes to these big digital storytelling conferences, which, they're kind of like almost like art pieces. And I was an art major. I was an art and technology major here. So I focused on animation and digital video. And, kind of like how you would submit something to a gallery, you can submit to these digital storytelling worldwide events and then, travel around and stuff. So. Like I was asking you before, how many people have created video? Video is the new text, is our motto over at my department. And what that means is, maybe 10, 20 years ago, when it started turning into word processing, and then, you have to create image graphics. And today, it's multimedia is like a 21st century skill that you'll need to know for teaching online, which is blowing up right now. As well as, just to know these skills to communicate with people in general. So I'm going to highlight some of those things. I really appreciate how it brings a personal touch to the academics. So you can tell a story from your own life that relates to your academic content and kind of connect with people, make videos more personally engaging in that way. And the replayability is a big thing. So I have a slide that demonstrates that. So if you're lecturing, I might be talking 200 to 500 words per minute. And if you were trying to take notes on everything I was saying, you might get 20 of those words in. So that's 180 to 480 words lost. And if you make a video, people can scrub around, scroll back, replay it if they missed something. You can show things visually. So it can help with that like mastery type learning. And so these are the 7 elements of digital storytelling that we talked a little bit about, some of these so far. Point of view, like I said, usually first person, you're usually telling your story, but you can take on other personas, but that's really important. The dramatic question is like sometimes it's a conflict, but it's usually just a question that drives your piece forward. So in movies and pop culture, that might be like, does the guy get the girl, or who done it in a murder mystery type thing. You just want to create that sense of emotional investment and questioning in the viewer, kind of like how Brian Edmiston did with The Wolves. Emotional content. I love this picture because it shows how you can have a happy, funny story, or you can have a sad story. Either one is great. To elicit emotional reaction from your viewer is a very powerful tool with any type of multimedia. And the gift of your voice, like with Brian Edmiston's, you can tell he has that accent. You kind of know he's from somewhere in the UK. And so you can tell sometimes people's ethnicity, their age, their gender, as well as like the emotion behind your voice kind of can tell the story for you, versus like if you had a narrator tell your story, they wouldn't have the same emphasis and emotion on the words. So that's a powerful gift that you have available to you when you record your voiceover. Power of the soundtrack. Like I said, you usually want it minimalistic, instrumental, so no lyrics that would distract from your voiceover, but you can really help set the mood with the soundtrack, as long as it's not distracting or overpowering. And I'll show you some good resources to get free copyright-free music. Economy, what this means is rather than describing this yellow flower with your story in words, you can show a picture of it. That picture tells 1,000 words type of thing, and save room in your script that way. And the pacing refers to kind of like the speed at which you have your images and voiceover coming through. So we want the pacing and the transitions and everything to be motivated by the subject matter of your piece. So what that means is if it's an upbeat, exciting story, you can have quick images, quick voice telling it. If it's like a more sad, contemplative type of piece, you would speak more slowly, have smooth, slow transitions. It makes a cohesive piece that way. So now we're ready to do the visual selection activity. And the way that this works, I think we have enough for each, like groups of 2. You can work with a partner. And so you'll have this story, and there's one sentence that's highlighted. And so this is not my story. It's by Randy Moe. But what you do is choose an image that would go with that sentence. And then you pick the number from the image that goes with, like, this is D. And then you come up and write that letter on here. You thought I was teaching you the alphabet here, but you already know that. So I'll pass these out. And, it doesn't have to be a literal image, because if it says, like my grandma, you might not have a picture of that. You can do it like metaphorical. Some of these are like a picture of fire or something. You find something that metaphorically, symbolically relates to the sentence. When I was working at a local community college, I frequently needed to ask the dean's administrative assistant for help getting things done. However, she was not easily approachable, and I found ways to get things done without her unless it was absolutely necessary. One day, she said something to me that not only changed our relationship, soon after it completely changed my life. I came to work that day with a burn mark on my cheek. She noticed it and asked about it. So I said to her, I had this big freckle on my cheek, and I'd noticed that it was getting bigger over the last few years. The last time I asked a dermatologist about it, he said to ignore it, especially since removal usually left a scar that was even more noticeable than the freckle. Now that I have a new doctor, I asked again. He sent me to a dermatologist who said that I should get rid of it right away because these things tend to change into skin cancer. Before I could even ask him about a scar, he came at me with this blowtorch-looking thing. He went at me with the blowtorch and just burned it right off. The woman chuckled at my story and commented that I was one of those persons who, instead of just saying, I had a freckle removed, had to tell a whole dramatic story when answering a question. I asked her what she thought about this tendency. Was it okay, or was it something that bothered people? She answered, we need people like you. We need people who can tell a story and make everyday life sound more interesting than it really is. That's all she said, but it stuck with me. After that, I didn't avoid her quite so much. Within the year, I had to leave that job to take care of my ailing mother. When Mom passed away, a lonely, heartbreaking void was left inside me. I eventually checked out the local storytelling guild. I was amazed that there is a place for people who answer questions with a story, that people actually want to hear me tell stories about everyday life. Now I'm telling my stories. I'm telling the stories of people who can't tell their own stories, and I'm helping seniors remember and tell their stories. All because I can't answer a question without telling a story, and I finally claim that as good. I think you kind of start to get the idea of how the images match up with the voiceover. You find I'm usually switching images when you start a new sentence is usually a good time to switch to the next one. So I created a video in order to show how to make digital stories. And the video also kind of shows how I made the video in the video. And I'll show you this. And then this is good because you won't be able to remember all of the different little tools in the software, but you can go back and watch this video later if you want to. It's on YouTube. So, you want to create a digital story. Digital narratives are a great way to tell personal stories, portray factual information, and express what's important to you through concise and engaging video pieces. The creation process boils down to 3 basic steps. The first step is to write your script. Actually, the first step is having experiences in your life, but hopefully you've already done that part. I would also recommend creating a storyboard to start planning which images or video clips you want to show while you tell each part of your story. The second step is to gather your materials. This involves recording your voiceover, and I would encourage you to try to use an external microphone in a quiet room, not your laptop's internal mic. Audio quality makes a big difference to the impact of your piece. Audio quality makes a big difference to the impact of your piece. This step also includes gathering your images or video clips. You can search the Creative Commons for copyright-free images, videos, music, and sound effects. Remember, when you save each file, copy the author's username into the file name so you can attribute them in the credits. This will save you a lot of time versus looking them up again later. Check out digitalstory.osu.edu/resources for some great websites to search. The final step, where this video will focus, is bringing your materials together in video editing software and timing the lengths of your photos to match your voiceover. I'll show you the basics in iMovie and Windows Movie Maker. We'll start with iMovie. I'm going to show you the basics of constructing your story and cover some common pitfalls so you can avoid them. Okay, now this is really important. Before you start importing your media into any editing software, make sure that your files are organized and named the way you want them. Having a folder for your project with all your files neatly named and organized not only saves you the headaches of searching for things, but it is essential to keep things in the same place with the same name after you import them, because if you move or rename the file, iMovie will still be looking for it in the original location and you'll get errors. If you're using iMovie from iLife 08 through iLife 11 with version 9, I'm going to recommend doing the free upgrade to Mavericks operating system because iMovie version 10 is a lot easier to use. Having said that, I'm going to show you the previous version of iMovie because it's a bit less intuitive. When you first open iMovie, you want to start with a blank new project, no theme. Next, you can begin to drag and drop your images into the timeline where you see the drop zones. They'll come in at 4 seconds each by default, but that's pretty quick to show anything while you talk about it, and you'll probably want them longer than that. You can double-click an image to bring up the inspector. From here, you can increase the duration. To save yourself some time, you can apply this change to all stills in the timeline. This will also affect new stills you bring in. This is a great time saver because it's easier to trim clips shorter than it is to manually increase their duration. However, you must turn this checkbox off before you can trim clips by selecting parts of them and hitting the delete key. When you've brought in all your images, you're ready to bring in your voiceover. When you drag your audio file over, place it on your first image and look for the green plus sign. This creates an audio track that you can then move around and split in the timeline. If you drag your audio file over the background and it changes color, it cannot be moved or edited easily. This is meant for background music that goes over the entire piece, but I don't recommend this method. If you do this by accident, you can always press Command-Z or go to Edit Undo. You can add your voiceover and music tracks over a clip the same way, and then move them, trim them, and split them at the point where the playhead rests by going to Clip, Split Clip, or using the keyboard shortcut Shift-Command-S. You can use this to create dramatic pauses. So I'm hitting the spacebar on my keyboard to pause and play, and then selecting and deleting parts of the images to get the timing right. You can also add transitions by dragging them between clips like so. And you can add titles before, between, or on top of clips. Remember to add your credits at the end to give credit to your image and music sources. iMovie autosaves, so there's no need to save unless you want to transfer your entire project onto an external drive, which you usually have to do by copying the iMovie events and iMovie projects folders. When you're done, you go to Share and Export using QuickTime to create your video file. And that's all there is to it. Windows Movie Maker has a similar workflow in which you drag your images and voiceover into this Collections pane and then into your timeline. Remember not to move, delete, or rename them after you import them, or Movie Maker will get confused. Also, with Movie Maker you only get one track of audio. If you want to have music simultaneously with your voiceover, you have to combine them in an external audio editor like Audacity. Or after you finish editing your story with your voiceover, you can export it, then re-import your video, add the music, and export again. You can add your credits by going to Edit Movie, Make Titles or Credits in the Tasks, and Add Credits at the end. When you're done, click Done, Add Title to Movie. To export your video under Finish Movie, click Save to My Computer, name your file, and click Next. And there you have it. If you've used Creative Commons images and music, then you can upload your video to YouTube or another hosting service, send it to your friends, family, or colleagues, and everyone will just love it. For more information on making videos and assigning video projects in the classroom, click here and here. And thanks for watching.